Venezuela Nuestra campaign command denounced the international media's actions to disregard electoral results and processes. According to U.S. government officials, President Joe Biden is expected to sign an executive order to close the border with Mexico. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights denounced growing violence and death toll in the West Bank since October 7. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Argentina, university workers paralyzed its activities for 48 hours to demand salary improvements and denounce a lack of response from the government of Javier Milei. The university teachers adopted the measure after failed negotiations with the executive, in which the government did not formulate concrete proposals to respond to the salary loss that keeps more than half of these workers below the poverty line. In view of the situation, education workers reminded the executive of its responsibility to offer a proposal that allows teachers and non-teachers to fulfill their work. In this context, the workers underscored that a quality public university is not possible without decent salaries. Among the requests of the Argentine University Union are salary improvements to cope with high inflation and the restoration of the Teachers' Incentive Fund. They are also asking for the updating of training funds and an emergency fund to avoid the bankruptcy of the Social Security funds, among other compensation mechanisms that were abolished by the government of Javier Milei. Meanwhile, the Social Debt Observatory of the Argentine Catholic University, an organization that has been measuring socioeconomic indicators for years, confirmed that poverty increased by almost 10 points in the fourth quarter of 2024. The study found that for that period of Milei's government, poverty increased from 44.7% in the third quarter of 2023 to 55.5%. This is not the only negative indicator that has skyrocketed, as in the same period, indigence reached 17.5%, almost 9 points from the last quarter, which registered 9.6%. According to the study that determines poverty based on the value of the basic food basket, poverty in urban areas reached 24 million people, and almost 8 million are living in extreme poverty or indigence. Social movements and feminist groups in Argentina gathered again 9 years after the first protests of the Ni Una Menos movement. The main event took place before the National Congress at 6:30 p.m. local time, where all the groups that had been organized in several parts of the capital met. Women activists accused Javier Milei's administration of violating their rights and cutting funds that sought to mitigate gender violence, while every 35 hours a woman dies in Argentina as a victim of violence. In this context, activists also call on workers to take to the streets in defense of their rights against the law of bases that Milei is seeking to get approved in the Senate in the coming days.
I believe that in the basis law we must guarantee the rights of all, women and workers. I think that we have to take to the streets, that we have to go out and spread the word, no matter what day it is. Because it's about our rights. If there's one thing we've learned as a movement, it's that we have to take to the streets.
The Venezuela Nuestra campaign command denounced the international media manipulation to disregard electoral results and processes. The general coordinator of the campaign command, Jorge Rodriguez, showed samples of the manipulation carried out by the right wing through digital platforms on the electoral issue in Mexico, making parallelism with the attacks and media blockades in Venezuela. In this regard, Jorge Rodriguez warned that just like the Mexican far right wing, Venezuelan extremists intend to implement a plan to carry out fraud after the presidential elections on July 28th and promote violence in the country once again. The Foreign Affairs Minister of Venezuela, Iván Gil, announced through a post in his account on the social media X his arrival to the People's Republic of China. The representative stated that the visit has the goal of follow-up on the work initiated by President Nicolás Maduro in the consolidation of the strategic alliance between Beijing and Caracas. He will also inform the delegation will be meeting a wide range of evaluations and follow-up of the agreements that pursue the prosperity of both nations. Also on Tuesday, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil reported that President Nicolas Maduro spoke over the phone with Mexican President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum. On social media X, the foreign minister highlighted the fraternal and friendly meeting of the Venezuelan leader with the President-elect of Mexico. President Maduro congratulated Sheinbaum for her overwhelming victory in Sunday's presidential elections over the lies and manipulations of the far right. In this regard, both leaders ratified the path of cooperation and brotherhood between their nations and a commitment to strengthen the regional bloc CELAC and deepen cooperation. And in Mexico, during his Tuesday morning speech, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador expressed his trust in the economic foundation led by his administration. In this sense, the president assured that a better future is coming for the nation, as President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum will continue the work that was started.
Que va a gobernar.
And now that a woman is going to govern, the country is going to do better, much better, because we had the beginning, but the foundation have already been laid. It was very difficult, that first stage, but what is coming is going to be better in every sense. Economically, imagine the treaty is already in place. Foreign investment is coming in like never before. Mexico is one of the most attractive countries for the installation of companies. We are the country with the second lowest unemployment rate in the world.
During the speech, President López Obrador also stated he is grateful and honored to be President of Mexico.
Me siento muy honrado de ser presidente.
I feel very honored to be president of this country with an exceptional, unique people, a very conscious, very generous, very peaceful, very intelligent people, wise people. And we have to keep it that way.
Muy consciente, muy generoso, muy pacífico.
In other news, U.S. President Joe Biden signed on Tuesday an executive order to close the border with Mexico and reduce the number of people who can apply for asylum in the United States. The initiative allows U.S. authorities to close the border with Mexico if the daily average of migrant encounters reaches 2,500 at the official ports of entry. According to a senior administration official, the shutdown will go into effect immediately since that threshold has already been met. The border would reopen only once that number falls to 1,500. Experts estimate the measure shows Biden is taking actions ahead of the November elections and after most Republicans and some Democrats in the Senate rejected a border security bill in February. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, denounced the escalation of violence in the occupied West Bank that has resulted in a record high number of Palestinians' deaths since October 7th. The UN Human Rights Chief condemned the unprecedented bloodshed the people of the occupied West Bank are being subjected to day after day, and described as inconceivable that more than 500 Palestinians have been killed in the last 9 months by Israeli forces and settlers. Despite the absence of armed hostilities in the region, the Israeli Zionist army has carried out at least 29 militarized operations on refugee camps and on other densely populated areas. In this regard, the official demanded access to the violence and human rights violations and assured that these are lives that have been deliberately silenced. Palestine, also the Information Office of the Gaza authorities revealed that the Israeli occupation forces have dropped a total of 78,000 tons of bombs on the Gaza Strip since the onset of their aggression in October 2023. According to the briefing released on Monday, 240 days after the beginning of the aggression, the attacks have reportedly caused $33 billion worth of economic damage in the Gaza Strip. The report also informed that 1,095,000 Gazans suffer from infectious diseases as a result of experiencing constant displacement and poor living conditions. Meanwhile, in Syria, Hezbollah Secretary General Said Hassan Nasrallah met Tuesday with Iran's acting foreign minister Ali Bagheri Khani and his accompanying delegation. During the meeting held in Damascus, the officials reviewed the latest political and security developments in the region, particularly regarding Gaza and Lebanon, and discussed proposed solutions and potential scenarios for the evolving situation. Bagheri Khani had previously met with Palestinian faction leaders on Monday, where he reaffirmed Iran's continued support for the resistance in Palestine. In this regard, the diplomat assured the Palestinian cause remains a priority for Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In Syria also, at least 17 people were killed by Israeli forces in an attack on Sunday night in the city of Aleppo. The Syrian Ministry of Defense reported that the attack by the Tel Aviv regime took place from Tanef, an area occupied by Washington's support troops, in the direction of several positions and facilities in Damascus. Syrian authorities also indicated that the bombardment generated several material losses in the territory. In view of the situation, the Syrian Ministry of Defense denounced these actions as a violation of its sovereignty and international law and urged the United Nations Security Council to comply with putting an end to the Israeli aggressions. On Tuesday, Panamanian police continued to transfer indigenous community from Carti Sugudupu to Nuevo Carti due to floods triggered by the sea level rise. The 1,200 islanders of Carti Sugudupu, one out of 365 islands in the Gunayala archipelago, live in overcrowded and poor conditions. In addition, homes regularly flood due to the constant rise of the sea. The Panamanian government estimates that Carti Sugudupu will be under the sea by 2050. The administration of Florentino Cortizo allocated $12.2 million to build Nuevo Cari, in which they will settle in houses of 40.9 square meters that will have running water and electricity and a plot of 300 square meters useful for planting.
We feel sadness because if this island disappears, part of our heart, part of our culture disappears.
For all the families that are moving, it's a good thing, but at the same time, it's sad because we have been living on the islands for many years. But well, we have to adapt. A people without culture, without identity, is a dead people, so we must never forget our roots.
We're now going to take a final short break, but before, of course, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community. You can scan the QR code that you can see on our screen so you can join us and share the link to reach more people. Always updated news from the world, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Venezuela Nuestra campaign announced that evidence has been found that the opposition is preparing fraud plans for the upcoming elections on July 28th. Our correspondent Leonel Retamal has all the details.
Greetings. The President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, and also coordinator of the campaign of President Nicolás Maduro and current candidate for re-election, pointed out that there are serious evidence of fraud that the opposition is trying to establish. This based on different analyses they have made regarding the behavior on social networks, the lack of commitment to accept the results of July 28th at night when the voting takes place. The 40th scenario that they are evaluating, the most likely one, pointed out and denounced by the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, is the fraud case. Before that, he said that the Venezuelan people want peace, they want stability, they do not want violence, and all these facts, these possibilities will be faced with justice and also with the people in the streets. When asked about this issue, he said that they will give a firm and decisive response to the destabilization attempts. He also pointed out the role of social networks and compared it to what happened recently in Mexico, where they tried to create a negative reputation around the elected president, Claudia Sheinbaum, orchestrated from the social networks with bots, with fabricated patterns from there. However, none of that resembled reality, and he pointed out that this is a scenario very similar to what is happening in Venezuela, where a whole possibility is raised by the sectors of the opposition that do not have a correlation with what is happening, with the noise of the campaign, with the reception of the proposals and ideas of President Maduro, and with the territorial deployment. So this is the alert, the denunciation, possibilities of fraud on the part of the opposition in the Venezuelan elections that will be fought with justice on the one hand, and with the mobilized people, as pointed out by Jorge Rodriguez, President of the National Assembly. Back to you.
On Tuesday, the Ukrainian government informed that Western weapons have already been used against Russian territory. In this regard, Irina Vereshchuk, Deputy Minister for the Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories, said that weaponry provided by Western allies hit a Russian long-range surface-to-air missile system. Vereshchuk explained that the attack was carried out only hours after she had been granted permission from Western partners to proceed. In this scenario, the Kremlin government has repeatedly denounced NATO's support for Kiev's use of these weapons, with Moscow authorities warning about the consequences of involving third countries in the conflict. The Russian government announced that the presence of foreign servicemen in Ukrainian sabotage groups proves the involvement of the West in terrorist activities against Moscow. The head of the Russian delegation to the negotiations on military security and arms control in Vienna, Konstantin Gavrilov, assured that from the 92 foreign sabotage groups operating in Ukraine, 14 of them are from the United States, who are allegedly staying in territory as mercenaries and instructors. Gavrilov denounced that these groups are actually engaged in planning terrorist operations against Russia and condemned the decision of several countries allied to Kiev of allowing the use of their airspace to attack Russian territory. For context, the Russian Defense Ministry estimates that at least 13,387 foreign mercenaries have arrived in Ukraine since the end of February 2022. In China, authorities reported the departure of the Chang'e 6 probe from the lunar surface, carrying samples collected on the far side of the moon, representing an unprecedented feat in the history of lunar exploration by humans. The Asian giant's National Space Administration reported that the Lunar Ascent module entered a pre-established orbit around the moon. The agency stated that the spacecraft completed its smart and quick work of sampling and then preserved the samples in a container inside the probe's ascent module. In turn, within the framework of Russian-Chinese cooperation in space research, the Deputy Director General of the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos, mentioned that the station's mission will be to carry out scientific research to study and use the moon. The Chinese Laboratory for Lunar Samples is now ready to start the analysis of the samples obtained by the Chang'e 6 probe on the far side of the moon. The Lunar Sample Laboratory is located in the capital city within the facilities of the Beijing National Astronomical Observatory. The sample will pass from the orbiter returning lunar orbit to be sent to the Earth, where samples from the Chang'e 5 probe will also be studied. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.